right, welcome everyone to the first in a new spin-off series that I'm also rolling out of Hidden Gems. This is going to be Last to Know. I used to do these Last to Know segments every once in a while doing Hidden Gems, every couple of months or so, but instead I've decided to segregate this into its own special series that I will be running, intermittently here and there, mixing it up with sneaky keys and trade secrets and all the other fun things that I like to do here on the side. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this first episode, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, again, just to kind of explain what this is a selection of final issues in series. If you weren't aware of it, a lot of series, when they wrap up, a lot of times print runs go down, books get harder to find, and there is extra value in some of those books, and they can command more of a premium than, say, just a middle-of-the-run type of book. So some of these final issues in some series, whether it be, again, a planned ending or again, a surprise ending because a book gets canceled. Some of these books do very well on the aftermarket. And this is a selection of those final issues, and that's why it's called Last to Know. So once again, hopefully you enjoyed this. So I'm going to start it off with some books that I might have covered before, but considering those shows are a couple years old now, I figured newer viewers could use the benefit of some of the refresher here. And we're just kind of setting the stage for some more books to come. And with that said, we are going to start our show off with an old book that is a classic. Some of you might forget when Superman initially ended before being revamped way back in the 80s, but the historic last issue of Superman, issue 423, is one that a lot of folks still look for because this is part of the Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow storyline. Great read, Alan Moore. If you haven't gotten it, this is a book to go and look for. And again, it does all right. It's not going to make you rich, but it is a nice little book that you can find, with an average sale of around 15 to 20 bucks. It's not too bad if you can find this in a cheap box somewhere. It appears to be just a random Superman issue, but it is the last issue of that inaugural run for Superman. Now, while average sales are around 15 to 20 bucks, average listings are seeking a little bit more, looking for more like 20 to 40, depending on condition. That should go without saying for most of these things, that most books, higher the grade, you're going to get a higher price. Obviously, lower grade, you're going to get lower prices. So I'm just trying to ballpark some numbers here to give you some high to low ends for this, but there are obviously going to be books that are higher and books that are lower than some of the numbers that I give you here. Now, also, just for context, I want to let you know how many people grade these books. So another data point that I'm going to provide you here is the CGC census on this book. So Superman 423 has a big number, 198 copies in 9.8. Not going to give you the whole run. I'm just giving you the 9.8 numbers. Just again, for kind of a quick data point, just to give you a ballpark idea of how many people are grading this and how many you can find in this in high grade. And with almost 200, there's a decent number that you can find in high grade if you go out there hunting for this book. Now, that's kind of setting the stage for what we're talking about here. Again, final issues, last issues and runs. And we're going to stick with DC and go to our next book, which, again, I covered this one before way back on Hidden Gems a few years ago, but Lobo 64 is the final of that Lobo run from back in the day. Yes, Demon is appearing in this issue. This used to be a lot pricier than it is now. Like, I remember this was getting close to triple digits at one point. Now, average sales are around 30 to 50, which is still a solid number. That's still a big number for a book like this. It's just the last issue in the run. Nothing really else about it apart from that. Average listings on this book, well, kind of in the same range, 35 to 55 is what I could find out there. And again, higher grade you might get a little bit more, lower grade you might find a little bit cheaper. And unlike our last book, not as many in the census in 9.8. For this one, we're only looking at 16, which again, that's not a big number. It's not a tiny number. It seems like it's about right for a book like this. Not everybody's getting this graded, and getting 9.8 still isn't going to be the easiest thing to do for some of these older books. Now, we're still going to go one more over at DC, kind of sticking with the anti-hero kind of vibe with Lobo, and we're going to go check out Deathstroke's longest running series, which ended with issue 60. And this is a fun cover. I always like this one with the skull on top of the sword, bright white background. And again, this used to be pricier. This used to be around 50 bucks, kind of where that Lobo book is now. But these days, average sales are only around 20 to 25, which ain't too bad. I mean, I guess it's because we don't really have any Deathstroke talk going right now. Years ago, we had Joe Manganiello showing up, and he was going to be the Deathstroke in the Snyderverse, and there was excitement around that. He might have been the bad guy in a Batman movie that was coming at the time against Ben Affleck. All of that has kind of fell by the wayside now that we're getting a revamped DCU from James Gunn, but who knows? Maybe we'll get something new out of Deathstroke soon. I mean, he did kind of come back in the comics somewhat recently, so maybe his profile will be upped a little bit, and we might see more of a bounce back for a book like this. That said, listings, I mean, average sales 20 to 25. Listings, kind of in the same range, but you can find on the low end, 15 to 30. I mean, if you're not too concerned about a 9.8 type grade, you can get this pretty cheap. You know, you can get in like a VF copy, not too bad. And just like the Lobo book, if you are looking for 9.8s, well, you do got 16 options right now. So just like the Lobo, we have 16 9.8s for this Deathstroke number 60. Now, I'm doing this show in chunks and in segments, and I'm going to do them in segments of 4. So those were 3. We have one more DC book for me to cover right here, and this book is from Vertigo, Sandman Mystery Theater. I know, I was thinking about doing the regular Sandman issue 75, especially that second print for the regular Sandman title, but, you know, I figured let's go a little bit off the beaten path and go with Sandman Mystery Theater, issue 70, came out in 1999. This book, average sales around 15 to 30 bucks, which I don't know if that's a surprise to you or not, but this is a title that is sort of a niche kind of a thing. This isn't one of the more popular series out there, and it's probably a book you can go and dig in some cheap boxes, and maybe you get lucky and you find this final issue for $1 or $2. That's my point. And maybe you find it, and now you got yourself 15 to 30 bucks on an average sale. But listings are looking for a little bit more, as listings can go anywhere from 30 to 80 bucks right now. So again, this is a tough one to find. It's the final issue, but it's not impossible. And if a lot of people don't know to look for it, and now I'm giving you information that maybe not everybody has, I'm arming you with information to use when you're out there digging. That's what I'm trying to do here. Just give you some ideas of things to go and dig for when you're out there hunting. I'm not saying go out there and spend 80 bucks for this online. I'm saying go dig for it for cheap, because no one else is probably digging for it right now. So here's one. 30 to 80 bucks is what they're seeking for. And if you find a really nice copy, you could have the first 9.8, because right now there are no 9.8s in the census. There are 296s. I found that, so there's a little subnote there with the 296s, but there are no 9.8s right now for this particular book. All right, cool. That's going to wrap up our DC side of things. And before we move on to our next segment, I want to remind you guys out there, if you need supplies, go over to BCW. You can get your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, CGC boxes, top loaders, pages for your cards, top loaders for your cards, basically anything to keep your comics or collectibles safe. You can find something over at BCW. You can use the link below, but definitely use my code RENA10 to save 10% off your entire order. So you get 10% off your whole order just by typing in that code RENA10. You help out the channel, you get yourself a discount. You got nothing to lose, because this is stuff we all got to buy. We all got to buy bags and boards. So you might as well save some money while you do it. Now, we're going from DC over to Marvel now for another chunk of 4 books. So our first one we're going to throw out there. And again, no theme beyond that. Just throwing out some random things just for fun. And again, for information for you. And our first one is Conan the Barbarian, issue 275, The End. Now, even you can see here, the best picture I could find is still a copy that is all dinged up. So finding a nice, clean copy of this could be tough out there in the wild, but it is a book that you should be aware of. Granted, it used to be pricier than it is now. I, again, remember this book. You used to get close to triple digits at one point. These days, average sales, 15 to 40. That's a pretty broad range. You can find some cheapies out there, might be a little dinged up, just luck in the auction, not a lot of bidders, and then some $40 sales. Listings, kind of a wide range here as well, 20 to 60 bucks. So again, you're going to pay more for a better grade, but that's kind of the range they're looking for right now. And like I said, this book used to be popular at one time, so I'm not surprised to see 44 9/8s in the census for this. So yes, despite that dark cover, everybody says black covers, it's impossible 9/8 with a black cover. It's not impossible. There are 44 of them. So keep that in mind. It's just, yes, they will show. They will show more clearly. I think the problem with like a black cover or a dark cover is that the defects are just easier for the novice eye to see. You know what I'm saying? Like, those defects are always there, whether the cover's black or not, on a lot of books. It's just, unless you know how to look for it or what you're looking for, you may not notice it as easily as you can find it or spot it on a dark or black cover. Not that they're harder or they accept damage easier than most books. It's just, it's easier to spot, realistically. That said, let's go on over to another final issue for us to cover here. And that is Darkhawk number 50. Yes, the final issue of that first run of Darkhawk from back in the 90s. Issue 50 is, well, it's an interesting cover. Maybe not my favorite cover, but this is always a fun series. And I do like where they eventually took Darkhawk and the Raptors and all that stuff eventually in the future with the later cosmic stuff. But the initial run of Darkhawk kind of ended here with his little power gem shining up the cover here with that almost 90s gimmicky vibe. Sales on this? Not too bad. Average sales can go anywhere from $30 to $70. This is a decent book if you can find the final issue. And those listings are kind of in the same range of around $30 to $70. So higher price for higher grades, a lower price for a lower grade. And much like the Conan book, there's a decent number in the census with 46 9.8s for this particular final issue of Darkhawk. Now, they're not all going to be expensive, the books I'm going to point out here. I mean, most of them will be a little pricier than normal. Some things, there might just be a story behind it, and some I'm just, kind of point out for fun. And this one here used to be a very pricey book. Way back in the day when Stephen Platt came onto the scene, these initial Moon Knight books were pricey as hell. These days, not so bad. You could find this Moon Knight run for relatively affordable price. But this final issue, issue 60, at one time used to be a beast. Now it's selling for only 10 to 20 bucks. That's not too bad. And that black cover, everybody with a black cover, but it's got a black cover, sure. Stephen Platt, first run on Moon Knight. Average listing on this, well, some of the lists are still seeking that higher price point that I remember, but you can still find those $20 copies, and then there's copies going all the way up to $70. So again, a very wide range, a very wide ask, and there are some cheaper out there, and yes, there may be even the random more expensive. And this book has a good chunk in the census, just so you know. Like I said, this used to be very popular. It still kind of is, I guess, but 293 9.8s for this particular book. So just keep that in mind. Yes, a lot of 9.8s out there, so it is what it is. If you're searching for one, you could probably go and find one. If you're looking to try to get one raw, well, that's a whole different story. Then you're taking your chances. But with that said, this book used to be a lot pricier. I remember it back in the day. Just that whole run from like 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, and 60. I think that's where it started. I think it started with 55. Maybe it was 56. No, it was 55. Anyway, this is the final issue, and this is the one we're talking about here today. I'd say grab any of these runs, any of the later issue runs. And that's also another thing to kind of just quickly kind of add on to this topic is that while final issues do very well, sometimes those other later issues also kind of get that same kind of upswell in premium pricing. So maybe not so much the case here with Moon Knight, but some of those series out there, like those last issues of G.I. Joe or Transformers, or even the end of the Silver Surfer run. And these are all other books that I might have talked about years ago and may bring back and cover on future shows. But that's the idea. It's not even just the last, even the next to last, or the penultimate issues, or the last couple of issues, whatever. You'll see it. You can see it out there. A lot of those, as the print runs were lower, those premium prices are there. So with that said, I got another Marvel for us to cover, one more to wrap up the Marvel chunk here, and that is Gwenpool. So the unbelievable Gwenpool. Yeah, she's got that new title running right now where it looks like she was kind of assassinated on the cover of issue 2. But the unbelievable Gwenpool, issue 25, was the final issue of her inaugural series. So this book has multiple covers and not incentives, open order covers. So we're going to kind of talk about them all a little bit, but this is the cover A for this book. And this book, average sales, pretty wide range, 25 to 75 bucks on these. Now, the average listings are also kind of in that same ballpark. And here's another one of those covers so you can see that there's more than one cover for this book, and the prices are all pretty consistent, honestly. This is the Jen Bartel cover. I do like this one, but there is one more, and we will show you that one here as the last one. Again, all the prices are kind of in the same range for all of these, but our final one is this cover right here. And yeah, so 1, 2, 3 options. You can see there from the CGC census, there are 21 of those cover A's, 22 of the B's, and only 13 of this cover right here. So if you're looking for census-wise, 9/8, this is the lowest one in the census for this book. But all these books, 25 all the way up to 70. You can see a lot of $40 to $50 asks out there and a lot of $40, $50 sales too. But this is an interesting book to go and hunt for because, again, it's Gwenpool. It just seems like a random anniversary 25th issue, but it is a final issue, and it does command a bit of a premium price. Now, with that said, before we move on to our final segment, I also want to remind any of you out there who haven't tried Whatnot yet, use my link down below and get yourselves a free $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want over on Whatnot just to try it. You get $15 off your first purchase by using my link below, and you get to try it out. You help the channel. You get yourself $15 to spend on something. So again, if you haven't tried it yet, you got nothing to lose to give it a shot. Now, with that said, let's go over to a selection of random indie books, maybe non-mainstream Marvel and DC is basically what I'm going to do here. This final segment of the show today. And our first book is actually Shadowman. Not the Valiant run. This is the Acclaim run. This is issue 6. And there's actually 2 volumes of this Acclaim run too. But long history for Shadowman. He's been rebooted probably half a dozen times at this point, from old Valiant to new Valiant, Acclaim a couple times in between, as I said. But this particular issue, issue 6, isn't that easy to find. It's Abnett and Lanning, popular for doing the Guardians of the Galaxy reboot that everybody loves from the movies. Like, that's the angle they took. Abnett and Lanning did a lot of great stuff over at Marvel with the cosmic side of things, but they also did other stuff like this Shadowman run. And I can't even tell you what this thing sells for right now because there hasn't been a sale in the last 3 months for this particular issue 6. And you're like, well, then it's probably worthless. Not necessarily, but asking prices, because again, it's not the easiest thing to find, are listed for $40 to $60. So, not saying anybody's going to definitely pay it, because I mean, they're out there and nobody's paying $40 to $60, but the asking prices are there because it has gotten that before. So if you find one, who knows what you might get. But $40 to $60 are what their current listings are for this issue 6. And much like the, what was the early book? The Sandman book from before. If you go and find yourself a nice copy, perhaps you will find yourself the very first 9.8 of this book, because there are no 9.8s in the census right now for this Shadowman number 6. So just something to keep in mind. Now, I also know you guys are probably pretty aware of Invincible, with Invincible running over on Amazon Prime. We still got a few seasons ahead before we get to the end, but the comic book has ended. If you were not aware, Invincible did end, and it ended a few years ago with issue 144. And even though this was an announced thing, and like we all knew it was coming to an end, this book still does pretty well when you look at all things considered. 144, there's 2 covers on this thing, but right now, this is cover A. And again, this is the final issue of the run. We knew it was coming, but still, prices are kind of crazy. $150 to $200. That's sales. Those are completed sales, folks. $150 to $200 for this book. And listings, and again, it's basically the same for both covers, because there are 2 covers, and I'll show you the other cover here. The average listings are kind of in the same range, $160 to $240. So, it's a lot of money if you could find one of these final issues of the run. And again, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't a surprise. It didn't just end. It wasn't canceled. They built to this, and it was promoted as the end of the series coming. I remember when this came out, and I wasn't really a big Invincible reader because I was so far behind, 144 issues. I didn't know. I knew it was good, and I figured I was going to read it eventually. I was collecting in trade and hardcovers, so I wasn't getting the floppies of this book, but I probably should have when you look at these prices now. And even with that, there is still a good number of these graded in the census. As you can see here, 9.8s. There are 147 of the cover A and 237 of this cover here, which is a throwback or a callback to the very first issue itself. You know, a little bit of an homage. So with that said, plenty in the census, but interesting that the prices is still so high. I guess it's partly because of the popularity of Invincible right now. Got an extra surge with Battle Beast, but whatever the case, this is a last to know, because this is the last issue that sells for quite a bit of money. And it's not alone. It's not alone. As here's another oddball one for you, the Maxx. I don't know if you remember the Maxx from back in the 90s. This was Sam Keith doing his independent thing. It was a bit of a weird tale. It was. I didn't quite understand it when it came out. I still don't really understand it when I try to read this thing, to be honest. But they did have a Maxx animated series on MTV way back in the day as well. Maxx had his day in the sun, and these books are out there, and they are not easy to find for a decent price. This is issue 35 of that initial Image run. And again, Maxx got handed off to like Wildstorm, I think, for a stretch with Cliffhanger, and then it got handed off to IDW, I think, at one point. There are reprints out there, which I'm going to cover actually once we get to Trade Secrets, another show I gotta bring back here. But the original floppy, final issue 35 from Image. This thing, average sales $50 to $100. So again, maybe not as much as Invincible, but that's still a premium price for a Image title like this from back in the day. And listings are in the same kind of ballpark. Actually, $70 to $95. So a little bit tighter and looking for that close to $100, but just big numbers on this book. And also in the census, it's not hard to find a 9/8 because there's 50 of them out there. So keep that in mind as well. And we have one more book that I want to cover here. And this is a book that gave me the idea to do this series way, way, way back in the day, because at the time I knew of the series. I didn't know what the last issue was. I just happened to buy it because I knew it was in this range. I grabbed the last 3 or 4 issues in a dollar box, mind you, in a dollar box years ago. And that was Akira 38. Yes, square bound. Actually, the copy I had was not a 9/8 candidate. It was a little dinged up, but for $1, I was happy to quick flip it for like $80 at the time. I wish I would have held on to it. Granted, $80 felt good at the time. Like, hey, look what I found for nothing. Because if I had held on to it, well, this is now $250 to $400. $250 to $400 for Akira 38. And yes, this is the final issue of the Epic Comics run. And again, Epic isn't so much an independent. I mean, this is kind of a offshoot of Marvel at the time, but still sort of independent, but sort of oddball, which is why I have it here. And again, the last few issues also do pretty well, but nothing like issue 38 here. $250 to $400 average sales. Those are sales again, because the listings, well, listings are looking for a closer to that high end, with $400 to $500 being the asking prices right now. So $400 to $500, and they are not all 9.8 candidates either. So, like I said, my $80 could have been $400 easy these days if I would have held on to it. And despite the fact that this is a square bound, kind of book, cardstock cover, a little thicker, should hold up to damage pretty well. There are still only 58 9.8s right now in the census for this book. So keep that in mind as well. If you do find yourself a nice crispy copy out there, that there are not a ton of them. And those, as you might guess, if Raws can get you $500, you can only guess what a 9/8 is going to get you. Probably talking like $2K. Again, I'm just going off ballpark. I haven't looked up the numbers in a while, but I'm pretty safe to assume it's probably $2,000 or so for a 9/8 these days. With that said, that's all I got for you for this first episode. About a dozen issues is what I'm looking to cover to keep it around 20 minutes. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you found this informative and helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Again, I got a couple of these more planned. I can go back and cover some books that I might have talked about years ago. We can talk about them again. Some newer stuff that's come out since then that's kind of raised up in price as well. A lot of things still to cover, but until next time, I want to thank you for stopping by and checking this out. I appreciate all the support, and I'll see you all later with some more content. All right.